This is Eric with Fast Track Pain and Mobility Solutions in Roanoke, Virginia. I help people with their aches, pains, movement, get them feeling better, functioning better, using efficient, more advanced techniques, bodywork techniques to help people get better faster, and usually in less time than with other practitioners, or if they're using other practitioners. If they use me in addition to that, we usually get them better, potentially even faster. But today I want to talk to you about shoe preferences and reasons why. Before I go any further, I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving medical advice. Anything that you take from this video, you're going to take full responsibility. If you choose to try something that I make a suggestion on, you're taking on all the risk. I'm just making some suggestions on things that how I feel through what I know about the body and how the body moves, and from injuries that I've helped people get through. We're going to talk about shoes and why some are better than others, and why you might find that some in your own closet, or possibly all in your closet, don't fit the criteria for what I would look for in a shoe personally. And then there's always some give and take, and the more criteria you have that fit what I bring up, the better. You might not be able to hit all the criteria, but the more you do, the better. So the first thing I want to talk about is, so we've got no slip, no squish, no squeeze, and no stiffness, and no heel lift. That's a lot of criteria right there, and I'm going to kind of go over them kind of one at a time. So no slip. Things like flip-flops or slip-on shoes that you just slide in and they don't have anything around the back of them. You just slide them on, and then as you walk, the foot moves differently to hold that flip-flop or slip-on shoe from sliding. And it's with or without your conscious effort. So when you have a slip-on shoe, it's going to, as you walk, it's going to try to slip around and come off, and we don't want that. If you want a summer shoe, like a sandal that has a strap around the back, that's usually fine. There's other criteria I'll talk about, but just give you some general stuff. If you like your flip-flops and you don't want to give them up, but you want to get something else summery to make up for it, you can get a sandal that has a strap around the back. Doesn't even matter if it's a thin strap, as long as it's a strap. I'm going to tell you why. As soon as the brain perceives that the shoe might slip off, the brain is most interested in you staying alive and being safe. So as soon as it perceives that the shoe might come off, it puts a lot of attention into doing something to try to prevent the shoe from coming off, which the common thing would be scrunching the toes in different parts of the gait cycle, to scrunch the toes every step of the way, every time you're wearing slip-on shoes. And so that's feeding a bad movement pattern. And even worse, on top of that, the scrunchy part of the gait cycle where you would curl your toes are on the two parts of the gait cycle, where two of the parts of the gait cycle that your toes should be in extending, or dorsiflexion, if you're familiar with that term. The toes should be extending this way. And what we're doing instead at the moments with the flip-flops or slip-on shoes is you slightly curl the toes to keep them on. So when you are propelling yourself off of that back trailing leg, I can't see my feet on this video, but by the back leg, your toes are going into extension, and that's where your flip-flop feels like it's going to come off, and the brain slightly grips those toes to hold on to that flip-flop. And so you're not only training a bad pattern, but you're training a bad pattern repetitive and in the wrong phase of the gait cycle. So it's totally thrown off the nervous system and training something that's not natural, usually more of an adaptation that temporarily may not be okay, but when you do it every step of every hour that you're walking around in these shoes, it becomes a problem. Plantar fasciitis, ankle problems, other foot problems, knee problems, hip, all that stuff could be affected by everything that we're talking about here when the foot is compromised and its freedom to move properly. So I hope that makes sense. So that was on the toe off, or not the toe off, the propulsion. The toes should be extending. The other part where the toes try to grip onto your flip-flop is when you are swinging your leg forward and getting ready to heel strike. In that part of the gait cycle, the toes again should be extended up, but because the momentum, the flip-flop could slide off, the brain tries to grip them ever so slightly to keep it from sliding forward. And that completely, when you do that, it completely throws off how the foot is in preparation to land on the ground to heel strike. And we're talking about running, we're talking about walking primarily, but most of this is still true in running. Slight subtle variations, but the same truths in the matter are still there. So you have two parts of the gait cycle where the toes should be extending, but your brain is saying flex the toes to keep the flip-flop or the slip-on shoe from coming off, because again, it wants to keep you safe. That happens in the background, whether you like it or not. But as soon as you have a strap or a full back on the shoe, the brain recognizes after the first step or two that it's not going anywhere, and it no longer tries to curl those toes. So imagine if you just right now grip your toes, feel how that tightens up the foot, and it tightens up even the tissues in the leg when you do that. And you can tell that that's going to affect all the way up the system. So that's the no slip shoes, no slip-on shoes. You need something in the back to hold on to. No squish. Shoes that have all this white, fluffy material for foam for impact support or cushioning. It feels good when you put those shoes on. It's nice and cushiony, but because it's cushiony, it's going to favor letting you sink somewhere that your body is feeding into. Let me go into that a little bit better. If you pay attention right now, take your shoes off and stand on your feet. Pay attention to the weight in the feet, where the pressures are on your feet. Some of you will feel that the pressures are more towards the front of the foot or some to the back of the foot. Maybe your pressures are more to the outside of the foot or the inside of the foot. No matter what, if neutral, well, we don't always want to be neutral. While we're neutral on the foot, if you tend, while you're just checking in with yourself or your foot pressures, if you tend to be heavy on the outside, and you always, you're walking, you're favoring that position more than neutral, that squish, that pillowy softness that's underneath your foot in those shoes, it's going to be heavier and squish more into that part of the cushion. And that's going to add to letting you favor that direction, even if it's inside. If you favor rolling inside, and that cushion, new shoes will have more firmness, and over time they start getting more breaking down and squishier, and that just feeds more and more into the pattern that you have that's bad. Whether it's inside, outside, or if you always weight your heels, you're going to have some of that, or always weighting the forward, front. But usually we've got some distributions one side or the other. Think of it like this. Many couches or seats now, if you're on a cushion, it has the sections of cushions. If you sit on the one cushion and you're off from the center, off a little bit, you'll feel that you sink in more to that side of the cushion. And if you sit in the middle, you sit more straight. And that's kind of the same thing that we're talking about, but that's sitting on a cushion, which is going to feed into your hips, spine, all the way up in your neck, and shoulders and everything. But we're talking about from the foot, so all the way up the system, it's going to be affected. And so as that cushion on your couch wears out, it starts to visually have that shape. If your shoes, if they're old or if you've worn them a lot, you'll see that they favor, if you look around the edges, some wrinkles will be on the sides of that cushiony stuff, and you'll see where your weight is kind of pushing in. Not all shoes will be that way, but that helps you kind of see what you're doing. But we don't want to be favoring and falling downhill into a slope. We want to be on a surface, even if that was one step and then the rest of the steps were in a different, more firm place, it wouldn't be a big deal. The body would adapt, but every step of the way, you're just training that in the system every time. I hope that makes sense. It might feel cushiony and nice on your feet, but it's feeding your weight distribution into a place that's not neutral, and so you're not helping yourself. You're actually training to make it worse, which is going to not run into foot, ankle problems, knee problems, hip, could be anywhere all the way up the chain. Now, no squeeze. Those squeeze. We go, oh, I really like that pair of shoes, but it's a little too narrow for my foot, but it's on sale, I'll get it anyway. And then it's squeezing, it's a little bit narrow, it's squeezing, keeping those toes squished together a little bit. Well, when the foot steps down when you're walking, it not only lengthens, you can see that in this model, but it also, which is hard to tell here, you can look down at your own foot. If it's a bare foot, pick it up and set it on the floor, and you'll see how it widens as you bear weight. It gets wider. You might be able to see it if you put these 2 points as your point of reference. It widens there. And if your shoes are narrow and your foot's trying to widen, you're kind of cramping it and not letting it move. And every one of these joints in your foot wants to allow that movement to happen, but you're not. You're restricting it with that tight squeeze on the shoe. So the more you limit, so just like the toe grabbing that we talked about with the slipping, that's going to that tightness that you put in your toes unconsciously, that's going to restrict movement in other joints, because if one's stiffening up, the other one's having to do something else to either compensate or whatever. Here, if you don't allow that movement, again, it's restricted. That's going to restrict movement through the whole foot and all the way up again into the leg and into the spine and everything else. So again, every step of the way, you're training that into the system, and somewhere is going to be the knock-on effect where you start having symptoms. The weakest link, if you will, is going to have a symptom, but that symptom doesn't tell you always what's wrong. But all of these issues we can help you in my office, help you sort through. But if you keep going into shoes that are possibly causing the problem, or at least feeding the problem from something else, then you're really, if you don't change that, you're going to always kind of have to go back and forth with getting better, getting slowly worse, getting better, the potential of that. All these examples, consider every step of the way. It's kind of like your tires in your car. If you don't rotate them every now and then, balance, alignment, you're going to get more wear, and that's going to put more wear and tear on your body or your tires, and shorten the life of the tires, or shorten the longevity of how well you can feel better and move better. So no squeeze on that. Something that I've gotten into accidentally is I still wear them, but I don't wear them much anymore, is I have the 5-finger shoes that have the toe shoes. So you have to have the socks that have the individual toes too, so you can get your feet in the shoes. Well, when I stopped wearing those and I started wearing Xero shoes, Xero with an X, X-E-R-O, just a shameless plug for them, because I'm really liking their shoes right now. I lost my place. The squeeze. With the socks that are the 5-finger socks, or the toe socks, it allows my feet to be natural. When you put on, now when I put on another pair of socks that don't have the toes in them, you can feel it pulls your foot in like this. And when you're so used to being natural and you get a sock that pulls your feet in, even if it's just a little bit, it feels awkward and uncomfortable. And if you even have a slight foot issue, that might exaggerate it. So I don't even wear I wear the toe socks even when I wear shoes that are not toe shoes. That's a little bit of a side tangent, but to make my point, is you don't want these bones squeezed together and restricting how they move. So no squeeze. Stiffness, no stiffness. The more the shoe can move. Here, let me show you real quick. So this shoe can move, can flex in all directions. It doesn't have support. If you pick up your shoe, some of you guys will have some shoes that have some really good flex in them, but a lot of them will be really stiff right up to the part where the ball of the foot here is, and it'll bend a little bit, but it won't twist sideways, or a spiral kind of twist, and it won't flex anywhere else in the foot. And so that's restricting movement, just in a different way than the squeeze. Very similar concept though. So so the stiffness, our foot was designed with so many joints and bones to move, and all the tissues in there are designed to kind of move in and out of those positions. And when we get a stiff shoe, it's like walking on a solid plank or a very, very little movement plank. Let's bring this one thing into the equation or the conversation. Is if you think about right now, if you go out and you get shoes for a child that's like maybe 1 year old, transitioning from crawling to walking, they're learning how to walk. The children's shoes for that young of an age, what they're doing, the sole is really thin and really flexible and pliable. The whole shoe is. It's really thin leather or material, and the whole shoe just moves. So that's because years ago when they started making them really stiff and shiny, those shoes probably in the 70s, 80s, I don't know when they stopped making them, but they were stiff, and they found that people's gait were developing in the development phases of their life. Their gait was getting thrown off, and that was thrown off from the feet all the way up, because the shoes were so stiff and clunky, the foot couldn't move, and it was restricting changing the way that things moved all the way up the chain. So they went, aha, we've got to let the foot be able to move so it can develop and grow. So that's why the shoes for those young ages are like that. They might be for 1 year olds, 2 year olds, 3 year olds. The more they get older, the harder it is to find soles and shoes that are more flexible. They start getting stiff and rigid because we start looking at style and fashion versus function. And then you got to ask yourself, why don't we continue going through adolescence and into the adult life having shoes that are more flexible so our feet can move? Why do we need it? Why is it so important when we're an infant toddler into development, and we don't need that anymore? You got to ask yourself that. Because the more you support anything in your body, the less movement it's going to get, and that's going to transfer into less movement and a knock-on effect through the rest of the system. So they know how important it is to let the foot move in the shoe industry, but they are preferring to sell shoes out of fashion than they are function, because fashion sells and function doesn't always sell. That's an opinion of mine. You can take it or leave it. We had the stiffness. Yes, we went the stiffness. The foot's designed to be moving in all these joints and bones. So we want a shoe that moves. I forgot support. We want little support in the shoe. We have all these arch supports here and shapes of the foot on the insole, ortho this, ortho that, orthotics this, orthotics that. If you support the foot in any way as you're getting older and the foot is supported, the muscles never have to move and support that movement in the bones. So think about it, as the arch is falling, the muscles are designed to pick that back up and carry on with the walk. If it's supported, then it never has to go into a full extension to pull the muscles back in to lift and support the body itself. So the more you support the foot and keep it from moving, the less the muscles work and the weaker they will get, and the less that you're using all the changes in the foot for stability, so it becomes actually a weaker system, not a stronger system. And we want less or no support. My shoes have zero arch support, zero support at all, so that's just to allow my feet every step of the way just be using their own muscles the way they're designed. Um, and it's just we gotten used to having support for years. Things have gotten weaker, and we don't know why, but it's because it happens slowly over time. Hope that all made sense. I'm kind of trying to run through this. I really didn't want this to be a long video, but it seems like it's getting to be that way. The other thing would be no heel lift. Oh, you know what? We might as well talk about the support a little bit more. A lot of people really have it ingrained that we need support. We need arch support. We need arch support. We need arch support. You know what? When we came out to our first birthday in this world, we were not designed with anything supporting our feet. And we know that as we're learning to walk, they've decided that it's better to have shoes that flex and move the way the foot was designed to for development. So when you support the shoe, support the foot in any way, things are getting weaker and not developing the way that they would. So it's the adaptation slowly that we've had. Orthotics, people are using orthotics to support their shoe. So when they're standing still, support their foot, that they might be in a more neutral place. But all the time that they're walking and doing activities, the foot never gets to fully move because of the support underneath it. So over time, you're allowing more weakness and less stability. I might have kind of said all that at first, but I felt like maybe it wasn't thorough enough, and maybe it's still not thorough enough. I hope that makes sense. We can take that whole concept into anything. Back braces, back in the 90s, everybody had to wear. They got fancy about having everybody at work had to wear a back brace. Back brace, back brace. They didn't want people hurting their backs because of lawsuits. And then it wasn't long. It was just a few years later that they started saying, don't wear the back brace all the time. Just wear it when you're lifting, because they realized people were getting they were being so supported by a daily back brace that the body wasn't having to support itself. It was getting weaker and more prone to injury. So they started saying only use the back brace when you're lifting, so you're getting a little external support. So there's this gray area is, well, if you can lift it safely without the back brace, you're using your body, which is good. But if you push the limits and you didn't have a back support, then you might hurt yourself. So you can use the back brace only when needed. And you play with that on your own terms. Same thing with braces on the knees and so forth. If your body can do the activity without a problem, and you're just bracing it as a precaution, then you should decide, do you really need the brace, or are you just making your body weaker every day by having it supported from the outside, an external support? So hopefully that puts your brain a little bit more into some thoughts on the support in shoes that you can on your own decide if you want to take it into your thought process of shopping for shoes or not. The last thing, no heel lift. The more our heel is raised, the more that puts pressure down the foot into the front of the foot. If we go back to the comment I made, we were born and designed without support under our feet. We were also born where our heel would be at the same level on the ground as the ball of the foot. And if the ground is unlevel, that the foot can adapt and change. But at no time were we born with a heel lift and started from there. We didn't start from there. That's something we designed for again, it was for an external look, a fashion statement with the heels. And we won't go into all of that stuff, but it's transferring where the weight is distributed onto the forefoot down here, which is also changing how all the body mechanics through all the other joints, tissues, everything's kind of getting thrown off all the way up through the knees, hips, and etc. So even though it doesn't seem like a lot to have a little bit of a heel lift, it's every step of the way, and you're training that. And what's happening also as you're shortening the tissue that runs through the foot and the leg, and that's going to tighten things up, shorten things up, maybe I should say. It may tighten them up, but shorten them for sure. And then when you start having plantar fasciitis, and people want to, what they want to do is put you in an orthotic, which stiffens up your foot even more and less movement in the foot. The tissues are now getting supported more, weakening them, and they're going to get stiffer in the foot with the orthotics. When you really just need to get the tissues, whether it's slowly is best, slowly opened, or in a safe fashion, that can be rapid. And sometimes in my office we can see rapid changes very quickly, but it's rapid in a safe way versus trying to force anything unnaturally. So I hope that makes sense. We want to get the length back in the tissues and the function back in the tissues, not shorten them and position them in funny ways every step of the way. The heel. The other thing about the heel lift. If it's a tennis shoe, guys' shoe, all women's shoes almost have these, and guys' shoes even too. The heel is a thicker cushion that we already talked about than in the front. So there's even still a little bit of heel lift for men, but they did that to make it a little softer impact on the heel. Well, that's nice at first. It feels nice anyways. And then what happens is every step of the way for months and years that we have a cushion under that heel that's thick and squishy, our brain doesn't interpret the impact of the hard surface that's underneath us, the ground. So it doesn't adapt to that in the walk. It adapts to a squish that doesn't hurt. Then when you take your shoes off, you end up walking harder, hitting your heels harder than you would have been adapting to without the soft, squishy shoes. So you're getting a different transfer of the energy into the floor and a different transmission of the way that the brain perceives the information from the nervous system and the fascia, the connective tissue, which is what all of that is what I work with, going up to for the brain to make adjustments to everything. I want to make sure I went through that really quickly, trying to think if I missed anything. But all those things, the no support, no slip, no squish, no squeeze, no stiffness, and no heel lift, those are all criteria that the more you can have those out of the picture, the more the foot can move, the more the foot muscles the joints can move, the muscles can activate and engage and work and move you through life, and keep a good signal from the nervous system, proprioception, all that, and then it's going to help all that work better, and it's also going to give you more stability because you're not standing on a floating surface with a squish. You're not squeezed in a shoe and walking as much on maybe ice skates, kind of narrow feet, versus letting your foot be wide when it's got the weight into it. I know there are foot problems that have been, like, everybody's flat-footed, foot's flat down here, and they want to put the support underneath it. Well, the support underneath it's going to keep it from going down, but if you're not using the muscles that catch the foot from going down and pulling back up, then those muscles are getting more and more fatigued and weak and not getting used. So you're actually weakening the system instead of doing things like I do in my office to try to help get that system back working, so that it's not stuck down here, but can move in and out of down there the way it was designed to. There's probably lots of questions, lots of feedback that people might give me. Some of it might be stuff that you feel differently about, and that's okay. And some of it you might just be kind of like an aha moment, like I never thought of that, but it makes sense. And that's good if you feel like that was helpful to you. But the foot is something that most people don't know a lot about, and even people in professions that work with the feet are still looking at supporting things instead of getting them more functional. And it's just a matter of looking outside the world of what you've been taught in the past, and looking forward to how can we get the function back better than just supporting it, and making it more comfortable. For whatever it's worth, take that or leave it. It's a long spiel that I get into with clients in here. And with this video, it won't take as much time out of their sessions in my office. They can look at the video and take what they want out of it. And again, if you have any questions, you can let me know. Okay, thank you.